So in this video, we're going to look at some other financial issues that can come up when we are making a large purchase and borrowing money for the sake of that purchase. So the first is the idea of a down payment. So a down payment is typically required for a home purchase or really for any other kind of a large purchase. So if we wanted to borrow, say, $100,000 to buy a home, well, if the home costs $100,000, the bank generally is not going to want to lend you the entire value of the home. So they're going to require you as the purchaser to put some money down on that home, and so that's called a down payment. And that down payment or that deposit is usually a percentage of the purchase price. So maybe you'll have to put down, say, like 10% of the purchase price. So if the home's valued at $100,000, then if you have to pay 10%, that would be $10,000 that you would have to put down on that purchase. So you wouldn't be able to borrow the full $100,000. You would maybe only be able to borrow $90,000 because you have to make a down payment. Incidentally, that down payment is often what prevents a new home buyer from being able to actually purchase the home. It's not that they can't afford the payment, it's that they can't afford the down payment often. And so that's often an obstacle to being able to purchase a home, is that down payment. Other issues: a point is a percentage of the mortgage amount that's paid as a fee to the lending institution. So often a bank will charge what again is called points as part of financing the house. And so a point doesn't go towards the principal of the loan. A point is just a fee that is charged by the lending institution. And so again, they're called points, but that's the percentage. So you may have to pay 1 point, which would be 1%. So like again, if you are borrowing $90,000, if you have to pay 1 point, then you would have to pay 1% of that $90,000 as a fee to the bank. Other one-time fees and costs that may be required are things such as taxes. So you may have to pay part of the property taxes in the purchase. You may have to pay title fees, which is required again by the lending institution to make sure that there's no other liens against the property that you're trying to buy, meaning that no one else owns the property, just the individual that you're buying the property from. Other things like escrow deposits, banks require that sometimes. An escrow deposit is used like to pay home insurance so that the bank can be guaranteed that the borrower actually is going to keep insurance on the home and so on. Anyway, so there's lots of other things. We're mainly going to focus on down payment and points in this example. So example 6. Ben is buying a house for $185,000. The bank requires a 12% down payment and 1.5 points at closing. Other closing costs are $3,125. So those other closing costs that we're talking about would be things like the taxes, the title fees, escrow deposits, and so on. So Ben has to pay 12% down, and he has to pay 1.5 points as closing costs, as well as this other $3,125. So question A, what is the deposit required? What will be the amount of Ben's mortgage? B, what amount must Ben pay in points? And C, what is the total amount that Ben must pay at closing? So the deposit required is the down payment. That's what we're talking about there. So Ben's down payment is going to have to be 12% of the cost of the home. So to find the deposit or his down payment, we're just going to take 12% of the $185,000. So 12%, we're going to change that to a decimal, that's 0.12, times the $185,000, and that will give us Ben's down payment. So 0.12 times $185,000, that is $22,200. So in order to borrow the money to be able to purchase this home, Ben has to have $22,200 for the down payment. Now, what's going to be his mortgage? How much is he actually going to be able to borrow? So his mortgage, the amount that he's actually going to be able to borrow is the $185,000 minus the down payment of $22,200. So if I take $185,000 minus the $22,200, then that is $162,800. So that's the amount that Ben will actually be able to borrow from the bank. That's the amount that the bank would be willing to lend him in order to purchase the home. So that would be his mortgage. Question B, what amount must Ben pay in points? Well, again, the bank requires 1.5 points, 1.5 points, so that is 1.5% of the amount that he's going to borrow. So now notice that point, that 1.5 points is not of the full 185,000. That 1.5 points is for the mortgage amount. So if I find 1.5%, change that to a decimal. So 1.5 points is 1.5%, which is 0.015. And if I multiply that by the mortgage amount, $162,800, that's going to equal the amount that Ben has to pay in points. So 0.015 times $162,800, that is $2,442 that he has to pay in points. And again, that's a fee. So that's money that he's just paying to the bank in order to be able to borrow on top of the interest that he's going to have to pay for the mortgage. So altogether, part C, what is the total amount that Ben must pay at closing? Well, so his total closing costs, so in order to be able to secure this loan, he has to pay the $22,200 down payment. He has to pay the $2,442 in points. That's the fees from the points. And then plus he had the $3,125 in other closing costs such as taxes, title fees, escrow deposits, and so on. So if I just add those up, 22,200 plus 2,442 plus 3,125, that is a total of $27,767. So Ben has to have that amount of money to pay at closing for his house. And after he does that, then he would still have a mortgage of $162,800 that he would then have to pay off over the next 15 or 20 years, depending on the terms of the loan. And he would have to pay interest on that, depending on the terms of the loan and so on. So again, the point of this example was just looking at other issues whenever we make a large purchase, such as a home. And again, so those issues are things like the down payment, we may have points, and then there may be other closing costs that have to be taken into consideration. That completes this video, and that completes this section. You should be able to handle the section 8.5 homework. That also completes this chapter, so you should be able to handle the chapter 8 quiz.